And away we go. It's another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Editor's Show. My name is Pete Sweeney. I am the editor-in-chief of arrowheadpride.com, joined once again by my esteemed executive editor, John Dixon. John, we got a snow day type thing here in Kansas City. I'm looking out right now, looks like some light snow, and that'll be followed with some heavier snow later tonight. Are you going to snow plow? Are you a shovel man? Are you just going to let nature take its course? What's your plan here?
Yeah, I'm just going to let nature take its course. It's, it is what it is. I don't have to go very many places. Neither does Terry. So
yeah,
we don't get worked up about it anymore.
Yeah,
it used to be I'd be out there shoveling the driveway right away.
Right.
But
yeah, I just as long as you have your bread and your milk, I think you'll be good to go.
Yeah,
those are the
right.
two key ingredients
Exactly.
for the snow showers. Coming off the Chiefs' final game of the season, it was a 13-12. Kid you not, 13-12 win over the Los Angeles Chargers. Blaine Gabbert gets the W. Not a ton of Chiefs that are considered top players played in this game, but it was good experience for the younger Chiefs. And now we'll be looking ahead toward wild card weekend, super wild card weekend. We'll get up into that in a second, but it'll be the Chiefs and the Miami Dolphins. As we've said a lot of times, if you leave us a rating and a review, we'll read it on the editor's show. And so we'll do that quickly right now. We got 3 to read. This one is from Ridhouse. AP is an unmatched source for the Chiefs content. I'm always up for a dose of Pete's unrelenting optimism, along with the top-notch insight provided by John Dixon. There's no one funnier in the Chiefs kingdom than Ron the Show. I never miss one of his episodes. With respect to Butker and Deflategate 2.0, my dad and I were debating how much the inflation rate matters to a professional kicker. Our argument boiled down to whether I claim Butker could kick an empty 1-gallon milk jug through at least 25 yards. We ended up testing our theory with the milk jug in the field behind the house, but the results are inconclusive. I know you guys are busy, but could you give us your perspective on this? Keep up the great work, and thanks for your service to Chiefs Kingdom. I remember when Butker first came to the Chiefs, you get to see some of the field goal practice during the small media session that we're allowed each day. There is a palpable boom, sonic boom sound that comes off the ball when Butker kicks it that maybe I hadn't heard with previous Chiefs kickers. No offense to Cairo Santos, who just actually signed a really nice deal with the Chicago Bears. So congratulations to him. But I'm kind of saying that no matter what the object is, Butker is getting a hold of it, and he's sending that thing at least 25 yards. John, do you believe the butt kicker would be able to send a milk carton 25 yards down the field?
No, I don't. I think that an empty milk jug is going to have too much wind resistance because of its low density.
Right.
So
still inconclusive for this poor gentleman who's trying to just find an answer here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good to know. Let's move on with our next review. My nickname. Does this show know how important Tony's explosive plays are to the offense? Everyone should maybe take it easy on Tony moving forward. I don't know how much we're going to talk about Tony on this show, so we might as well just say it quickly here. I think ideally he would be available for the postseason, but I don't know if the Chiefs are willing at this stage to put him in any kind of consistent role. What would the snaps be in that case, John? Like I could see him being in more of like a gadget role where you design the touches for him, 10 to 15 range.
Right.
I don't think he's going to be a guy the Chiefs trust to build a game plan around at this stage. It'll actually make for a very fascinating offseason when it comes to Kadarius Toney in my mind. I don't know if he'll be here next year. He might be, but I think the wide receiver room will look really different.
Well, I know a lot of people think that's going to be true of Marquez Valdez-Scantling after this season, that he'll just be gone because there'll be cap money they can get by releasing him and so on and so forth. But yet he was a guy that didn't play during Sunday's game. They treated him as a valuable starter who needed rest. Mm-hmm. So I'm not entirely sure that, and I know this will make a lot of people mad, I'm not entirely sure the Chiefs are that unhappy with Valdez-Scantling. If it were me, I would make a move. I'd say we need that cap space more than we need your production.
Right.
But the Chiefs may look at it differently than we do. Maybe it's got to do with his downfield blocking. I don't know, but
I think so. I think I agree and disagree with you. I think I agree with you on this season. I think he's still going to be someone that is going to play in the playoffs. I think the Chiefs don't really have any other options of players they trust to know the playbook and
well, that's fair. Yeah,
can and I think they have to. And and I think Andy Reid also too. Uh, this is obvious, but it is worth being said. Is way less reactive than fans. Where he
sure.
Andy remembers what Marquez Valdez-Scantling was able to do in the AFC title game. Weird to say, but I don't know if the Chiefs advanced to the Super Bowl without Marquez Valdez-Scantling's performance in the AFC title game. So
Right.
they have seen him be productive before. Now, where I disagree with you is he's gone for me. 315 yards and a $12 million hit. Can't do it.
Well, no,
Can't,
I'm with you there. I just think
yeah.
that we're talking about, there's a difference between what I think they should do and what you think they should do and
Right.
what they will do. And
Yeah, I just think there's too many things to address to keep that guy on your roster for that money.
yeah,
And
I agree. Yeah.
they've made more difficult decisions with more important players, like Justin Houston comes to mind, for example. And Justin
Sure.
Houston, you could argue now, hindsight, 2020, right? But he had some pretty productive years left. Yeah, I'm with you though on this year. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to be getting snaps, whether we like it or not. All right, this last one's from Brandon and PDX. I appreciate the whole AP lineup. It's part of my routine all week at work as a mail carrier walking around listening to podcasts. The editor's show is important for putting things in perspective. Mark Gunnels gets me back up after Casey's all too often losses, and Show and BK make me laugh and prepare me for the 2023 Chiefs to be the 2023 Chiefs. Much like many of my exes will say, we are what we show you. Mahomes and Reed are right. If the bad things didn't happen, we'd be good. Yeah, I mean it's a fair point. I don't know if we had to bring your exes into this, but I think, and this is obvious as well. I mean, I keep saying obvious things in response to these reviews, but right now the Chiefs are 0-0 again. It wouldn't matter right now if they went 17-0, let alone 11-6, or if they had blown yesterday 10-7, whatever it is. So we restart the record here, John, and we look toward the schedule of this week. So we get through yesterday's game, and immediately, or I wouldn't say immediately, it was like about halfway through the Sunday Night Football game, the schedule comes out, the playoff schedule.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And what I found interesting here was the Chiefs got the Peacock game without NBC knowing if it was going to be Steelers Chiefs or Dolphins Chiefs. So what that tells me is they just wanted the Chiefs, and I tend to think Peacock, who paid a lot of money to have that exclusive streamed game, probably had their pick of the litter. And I think, and this is a sign of what 2023 has been too. I think the combination of Patrick Mahomes and Taylor Swift was too much for them not to say, we want a lot of people that are going to want to sign up for this service to see what happens on Saturday night. And worth being said here too, John, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of these comments. The game, if you live in Kansas City, is available on KSHB 41. Trust me, I have a part-time gig there. My superiors are very excited about this fact because there'll be a lot of coverage going into the game, and that's going to be a very highly rated game here in Kansas City. But for you out of town Chiefs fans, and I know a lot of you listen to our podcast network, it is what it is. It's Peacock or bust. This is the new world that we're living in, John, and I can understand why people are upset. But if you want some benefit of the doubt, right? We had some reviews talking about my optimism. You sign up for Peacock, you get English Premier League games. The Office is available on Peacock, and in just 20 days, WWE Royal Rumble. You get to find out who advances to WrestleMania to see the WWE champion one-on-one in the middle of the squared circle. So there's a lot more that comes with Peacock.
Every episode of Saturday Night Live as well.
And SNL.
Yeah.
So, if you're looking for some bright side of Peacock, I know it's a very unpopular it's a very unpopular thing that has happened here. But that is the situation at hand, John.
Yeah. I'd like to point out, I've had a commenter mention this, and it's true. You can actually watch this game on NFL Plus as well, but only on mobile devices. You can't watch it on your TV. You can't connect your mobile device to a TV and then watch it that way. It only works if you got a phone or a tablet. Now, some people are comfortable watching TV that way. I'm not.
Right.
I want to sit and look at the TV on the other side of the room because I'm an old guy. But younger people
Right.
don't mind watching games that way, especially if they have a tablet, or I guess you could do it on a laptop too, a screen of,
If you're a nerd like our producer Steven Serta, who's about to join us for marinated takeaways on the season in a few minutes here, he has somehow rigged up his entire garage to have movies played there, and there are probably ways that people way smarter than me could figure out that where you could stream this mobile thing into your TV. I have no idea how to do that, but look, if you there's 5 days to Google. I think there are some workarounds here. I'm also sure there's, and I'm not saying go out and do this. Don't name Pete Sweeney when you get caught, but I'm sure there are some streams online that you could access to watch this.
Yeah, I don't know anything about those other than a lot of them don't work very well.
Right.
And I will say this, I watched the game last night on Peacock just because it was easier for me to. Well, I don't actually get that channel very well on the antenna at my house here in Pleasant Valley. So I watched it on Peacock last night. And after having watched some games on Amazon this year, for me, the Amazon signal was not very good. Froze quite a bit, fritzed out quite a bit. The Peacock image was terrific. It was very stable. And
some of the services are better than others. I've seen that at Prime, even out watching the game. Thursday Night Football this year at bars where it's kind of come in and out, and it's not, it just depends on where you go and how strong the internet connection is. I mentioned the Premier League. I watched the Premier League games, and if you don't have Peacock, you're not going to necessarily have your team quote unquote games. And me and my friends have picked Tottenham, and sometimes Tottenham is just on Peacock. What I would say, and we can stop talking about Peacock and saying the word so much, is I think this is like the new reality. Like we saw streaming on Prime. We saw a playoff game now solely on Peacock if you're out of market. And I think you're going to see more of that as we go, right? Like the NFL's just like the international series, which isn't the most popular thing. I understand you may not like it, but I just think it's going to be more. I think they're already talking about having an international game per week, or maybe even having an international team, same type of thing. So there's a lot of money, unfortunately, in this streaming, and it's a wave of the future. And the Chiefs get that lone Peacock game on the wild card weekend. What this means, though, short rest again for Kansas City,
right?
Once again, I guess there is a slight advantage in the fact that their game finished hours before the Miami Dolphins, played in a bit of a dogfight against the Buffalo Bills. Pretty good Sunday Night Football game. I know that a lot of Kansas Cityans were rooting for Miami to pull it out because that would have meant Pittsburgh Steelers coming to Kansas City, but instead now the Steelers will be going to Buffalo, and also the Chiefs may have to end up going to Buffalo if things kind of play out as we think could as we go here. But the media schedule the next few days basically moves up. So if you're used to Wednesday to Friday, you hear an Andy Reid, everything is going to be earlier. Tuesday, we'll get Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Wednesday, we'll get the coordinators. And then Thursday, we'll get Andy Reid once again. And we will get one mention of today is my Wednesday, probably tomorrow, or something like that on what would be Wednesday. Or the coordinators might say, well, this is our football Thursday, that type of thing. This is an Andy Reid routine thing that he always leans into. And so another week of short rest. I mean, that's the bad news, John.
Right. And of course, that matters for us too.
Right.
It's all about us, as we keep reminding folks listening to the podcast.
I don't mind.
It's all about us.
I think if I had to choose from a little inside football here, but I think if I had to choose from a coverage standpoint, I would have picked Saturday afternoon. But I think Saturday night is probably the next best slot, because after that, we are just kind of sitting around waiting to see how it plays out and kind of can enjoy at least some or part of the weekend. You definitely didn't want the Monday night one. To me, Sunday night. So not the worst time slot in the world. Where it does concern me, though, is from an injury standpoint with the Kansas City Chiefs. If you go to this game against the Chargers from yesterday, a number of injuries occurred in the game. Let's go through them right now quickly. Left tackle Wanye Morris has been the left tackle for the past month here, with Donovan Smith dealing with an injury. He is now in the concussion protocol. We did see Isaiah Pacheco get through that concussion protocol in 5 days, but I tend to think that's more of an outlier than it is a norm. I wonder if Morris is going to be able to play in this game. It seems like every concussion is different, so it's a little bit
Right.
up in the air. We'll have to kind of watch how his practice goes. But where it gets interesting is Donovan Smith has tried to practice. I believe it's been 2 weeks in a row. He'll practice the first day and then they'll shut him down. So I don't even know if he's going to be eligible. And so what you could be looking at there is what the Chiefs did in the game, John. It looks to me like if those two players, Morris and Smith, were unavailable, you'd be looking at Jawan Taylor at left tackle
Right.
and Lucas Niang going to right tackle, which it's not ideal. Not as bad as 2020, but just not an ideal scenario as you head into what is the season's most important game.
I would have to wonder whether Jawan Taylor might be better combined with Joe Tooney on the left than he is with Trey Smith on the right.
Yeah.
You never know how these things are going to play out when you have guys playing next to each other. We might find that he's better on the left side just because he's got Tooney next to him instead of the younger player. Who knows? We'll just have to see.
Yeah. That there'll be eyeballs on Taylor. I mean, the refs have been watching him all year, and we'll see. Very uncertain at this point, but again, worth monitoring as we go. Other injuries in the game: wide receiver Justin Ross had a hamstring injury. This is a shame because I think he probably was playing his way into at least maybe a red zone specialist type of look. He showed a couple of what did he have? 2 catches in the game. One of them was a really nice high point.
It was,
you can just throw the ball up. I'm thinking more in the end zone. This was in the middle of the field because he got to play the whole game. But where you throw up one-on-one ball, and he, I think you got a pretty good chance of him coming down with it. So it's a shame that he has a hamstring injury. Hamstring in a game and then quickly ruled out is not good. I don't see him playing this week. I actually think he'll be out of practice. Maybe down the road in the playoffs. But a hamstring quickly ruled out is not ideal. But I guess if there's one position, the Chiefs have 70 receivers on this team, so they'll be okay at that position.
Yeah, I was very impressed with Ross's catch in yesterday's game. I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah.
But you're right. We may not see him the rest of this season if the Chiefs don't get another game.
And this is great. The thing that I wanted the most was a third straight year of preseason hype with nothing to back it up. And so we're good. That's what we got. This is going to be great. Cornerback Jalen Watson injured his calf in this game. It seemed like this is the least serious of the 3 injuries. I think he'll be all right. And obviously he is more of a reserve type of cornerback for this team, but still an important piece to watch. And then safety Chamari Connor. Andy didn't mention Connor after the game, but he did look a little shaken up. So I just think that is worth watching as we go here as well. If you go back to last week, there were a number of players who didn't play in this game with injuries and didn't practice last week. We mentioned Tony didn't practice toward the end of the week and was ruled out. He continues to deal with a hip and ankle injury. Wide receiver Rashee Rice, he has a hamstring injury that kept him out of practice all of last week. But seeing him pregame, he was smiling with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce all in their street clothes. So I don't know. I just tend to think Rice will be back in the mix. And then cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. Kudos to Sneed for playing in that second to last game because he was out of practice all last week with a calf injury. He was out of practice all of the week before and then managed to get on the field and handle Jamar Chase. And so the meaningless game afforded the Chiefs to give him some time off. I'm tending to think he'll be limited or maybe even a no practice again this week. And that way he'll be available for the Dolphins. We know that if there's any team in the league where you're going to want to have L'Jarius Sneed, it is these Miami Dolphins, all too familiar with what Tyreek Hill can do as far as wrecking a game, John.
I think it's worth mentioning, too, that Sneed has been a player who's been effective even when he's missed a full week of practice. Remember, at the tail end of training camp, he was out every day and then came out when the season began and was his normal self. There wasn't any sign that he hadn't been practicing all that much. So he at least is a player that we can anticipate will play well, even if he doesn't get all the practice time that he might get otherwise.
Really interested in seeing what happens with him this offseason. I mean, he clearly is an elite free agent and he's unrestricted. So Chiefs have Jones coming up and Snead. I just wonder how they navigate that situation. Speaking of Chris Jones, as we know, John played in this game. It cracked me up watching him celebrate finally getting the sack in the third quarter. I wrote it up this way in our rapid reaction. I felt like he probably shouldn't have been playing, and I there were different takes on this. One side was like, well, the Chiefs should have just paid it, and that way to maintain his health. Another side probably was like, well, Chris decided to hold out and didn't play in week 1, and he would already have it, and now he should go and earn it. And what ended up happening was one of your best, most important players playing in a meaningless game in the third quarter. But what happens? He gets the sack. It's pretty funny seeing everyone celebrate. You had George Karlaftis doing the "making it rain" symbol, and so those uncomfortable conversations that you might have had to have if something dire had happened here. Now you just don't even have to have that discussion. So sometimes
no, it's just
the best
fun.
thing to do with sometimes the best thing to do with tough discussions is not have them and move on and agree to disagree. And this is that perfect scenario where he got the sack, didn't get injured. You're good to move on.
It was a lot of fun though to watch that, and I think it's good that there was a moment like that in the game because there have been very few of them. The Chiefs have won 11 games this year, but very few of them are games where you were real happy about them when they were over, because so many of them, even the wins, had frustrating moments and turnovers and drops and all this other stuff. I just feel like there wasn't a whole lot of joy in this season. So it was kind of a fun moment in that respect to see Jones and the team be all happy about it, even though only Jones was getting the money.
I think it's been a year of disappointment across the board. This team has established itself as one of the elite teams in the NFL, and this year just hasn't been so elite. And it's affected the fan base. The fan base has not been happy with it. It's affected the players. It's affected the coaches because they see the criticism, and they haven't been happy with the performance. And I said this to Steve earlier today. Like, you're right. 100%. I mean, I was there last week in the locker room for the first time. You were like, you know what? This team is having a bit of fun finally. Smiling and celebrating and stuff we had seen a little bit more consistently in years past. And then you saw an extension of that yesterday with the Jones celebration, and I think maybe even more so than, again, Mr. Brightside over here, but I think maybe even more so than going into the playoffs with a bye week. They might. It's almost like they have nothing to lose. Somehow the champs have found themselves in a position where they can play loose again. Like, this is fun. No one. It's true this year again. No one is really picking the Chiefs ahead of the playoffs, and so a little bit of house money. Oddly enough, for the reigning champions, and I think that's a good place to be when you're entering the postseason.
Well, you just expressed that in a way that I hadn't thought of expressing it, but I feel exactly the same way. Over the weekend, my sister sent me a text asking which team she'd be rooting for during last night's game between the Dolphins and the Bills. And I said, and I've been listening to people talk about this all week. Well, if the Bills win and this happens, then this could happen and this can, it makes you crazy after a while. And I said to my sister, I can't decide. And you know what? Bring them on. I don't care.
Yeah.
This is a season where it's all going to be positive, because if they win, they win. If they don't, they don't. We weren't expecting them to do extremely well in this postseason. You're exactly right. It's house money. Right. And so bring them on. Let's see what happens.
I also think there's a cool part of this where Tyreek Hill comes back to Arrowhead. I think a lot of people, including myself, I think there was something lost by having that game in Germany. Not to say that I don't think the Chiefs should be playing overseas. I think it's a great business opportunity for the NFL. And like I was talking about with Peacock, I really have grown to enjoy following the Premier League. They don't play any games over here. I can understand where people really enjoy the NFL in other countries, and I think giving them the opportunity to see games. However, this is a game that should have been at Arrowhead during a regular season. With Tyreek Hill coming to Kansas City. And now you get that with everything on the line. It's kind of a makeup for not having that game here. I think it helps that the Chiefs actually played this team before. And so, to me, I think it's fine. I think you probably would have preferred the Pittsburgh Steelers, but in the NFL playoffs, the best teams will win, and you probably will see them anyway. If the Steelers are good enough, they'll beat the Bills, and they'll get a matchup with their division rival, the Baltimore Ravens, in the next round, and you kind of see how where you go here. But I do like the fact that you finally get that Tyreek Hill return angle, and we know he won't be shy about talking about some of the storylines that go with it. We'll have a little bit more of a preview when we get to the final segment here. I also want to quickly talk about Travis Kelce before we take a break, John. Travis Kelce chose himself not to play in this game. Sounded to me in the post-game presser that Andy Reid would have been willing to run him out there to try to get these 16 yards for 8 straight seasons of 1,000. And I had been texting with some colleagues heading into the weekend, and I promise you, I wrote, everything he has done to an extent, especially recently, has been calculated. And I said, don't rule out this, like almost like Cal Ripken-esque, I'm going to take a seat, end the streak, kind of give a little bit less attention on myself, do the right thing for the team, be 100% for the postseason, and end up being inactive for the game. And Andy Reid commended him. He didn't want to play in this game. And so one of the more historic runs in NFL history, 7 straight seasons of 1,000 yards or more, comes to an end at 7. As we've said a number of times, the next best streak of 1,000 yards for a tight end in NFL history was 3. And again, I like the move. I also think that a move like that continues to push and nudge in the direction of, could this be the end of Kelce as far as a playing career? As he starts to say goodbye to some of these things that might have meant even a little bit more to him as he was a younger, developing player.
Well, even if he plays next year, even if he doesn't play next year, this is a record that's going to stand for a long time. I think it's very likely that no one will break it during Kelce's lifetime. And he may have come to realize that he cares more about winning championships at this point. He's set a record that's going to stand for a very long time. And so who cares? The rings are going to matter more to him at this point. So I kind of, after reflecting on it, it makes sense to me. I was a little surprised. I would have thought that, he'd be all about getting 1,000 yards, but he's also a guy that has matured as an individual and has become a team leader. We've seen that. He's a long way from the, talking about the referee who couldn't get a job at Foot Locker.
Yeah.
We've come a long way from there. And he's demonstrated over and over again that he wants to be a team leader and a guy that people look up to. And that's the move of a team leader. So, we probably shouldn't have been surprised that he would take this approach, and, more power to him. And maybe it'll make a difference in this postseason. So, going back to what I said before, bring him on. Let's see what happens.
Taylor Swift held down the fort for the trailer couple at the Golden Globes last night. And, man, congratulations to the Bear in Succession. 2 of my favorite shows. Cleaned up at the Golden Globes. Hopefully they continue to win some more awards. But I think it'll be interesting to see how this conversation with Kelce goes. One of the caveats of the Chiefs being a little closer to the pack is this thing could be over at any time. So whether it's a loss or a Super Bowl win, I think the language of Kelce following that game will be something to watch and take in, because I don't know. I mean, I used to be in this thought process where I didn't see him retiring anytime soon, and just the way this year has gone and some of the decisions that have been made and just some of the things that he has said through local media, his podcast, these major stories that have picked up, Wall Street Journal and so on. I think anything can happen. I really do. So we will see what Travis Kelce decides to do. All right, that's our first segment. When we come back, we will get into those world famous marinated takeaways. Stay with us. Back here on the Arrowhead Pride Editor Show, it is time for those world famous marinated takeaways. John, it's been 30 minutes. We haven't even talked about this yet. We had quite a little bit of a hiatus because of scheduling for the Editor's Show. So rather than this just being marinated takeaways on the Gabbert Chiefs and their success, I am elongating the span here to the entire 2023 season. And with that, I'd like to welcome in everyone's favorite Grinch, Steve Serta, into our Arrowhead Pride podcast producer, into the program. And Steve, we will start with you. What is your 2023 marinated takeaway from the Chiefs?
Well, thank you for letting me go first after that incredible introduction.
Yeah, of course.
So I thought a lot about these, like my overall feelings on this Kansas City Chiefs team and this season. And I feel like this is a conversation that we have had in years past, but to me, it makes the most sense right now, more so than it ever has before in the Patrick Mahomes era, that this offseason is one that is going to be one of the most important off seasons for the Chiefs' future and their ability to continue to try to be in Super Bowls and continue to try to be, the top team in the conference, because we're seeing all these other teams really kind of ascend right now. And the draft class has got some really good quarterback talent. And there's just a lot of guys in the league right now that are really, really talented. And the Chiefs have more question marks this offseason than they have in any recent offseason. And we're talking about an offseason where, they had to rebuild the entire offensive line and they lost a Super Bowl because of that offensive line group from the year before. And so that was a big thing. And then this past offseason, it's Chris Jones and, they trade Tyreek Hill away 2 years ago. And then it's the wide receivers, and they found a 1-year fix for the wide receiver group, and now it's kind of in shambles again outside of Rashee Rice. But as far as the free agents that they have that potentially are going to hit the market, the decisions that they have to make, they still don't have answers at the tackle position on either side, really, that you feel totally comfortable with.
Yep.
Travis Kelce is clearly slowing down and is clearly not the same superstar player that we've come to know and love, even though I still think that he is a great player. He's lost steps, 34 years old. And then all of the defensive question marks, where I think this is the best version of the Chiefs defense that we are going to have for a long time, barring them just absolutely continuing to knock these draft picks out of the park. And so there's a lot of tough decisions that are going to be made this offseason that are going to have huge ripple effects for the future and how competitive they are here in the future, because we know they're going to be competitive. We know they're always going to be a perennial playoff team as long as Patrick Mahomes is their quarterback and Andy Reid's their head coach. But as far as truly like AFC powerhouse, you are the best team in the conference, you're the favorite to win a Super Bowl every year, I think this offseason is going to have a lot to say about the future and what our expectations should be. And after this season, we should probably dial back the expectations here and there, because it was a very frustrating season for Chiefs fans, but I think that's only because the expectations are so absurdly high for this team at this point.
And the NFL is designed that way too. I mean, as you have more success, it's tougher to keep the success going. And that's why for the most part, right? I mean, I think there's probably 25 teams that feel like, okay, we can make the playoffs this year. There are those 6 that you're like, oh, I don't know how this year's going to go. But that's part of how the NFL designs it. This is why we love bringing Steve on to the editor show. If I am a positive yin, he is a negative yang, and that makes for the balance that we need. I'm with you, though. I think it's an important offseason. I wanted to add a point to your point, Steve. There was something that you should remember, and this is a throwback, but Patrick Mahomes restructured his contract. John, you're more into this than I am, but the roster bonus time changed. And so this is going to be a very complicated offseason as to, I think, the Chiefs trying to figure out how much money they need to create to make sure that there is flexibility. You can surround Patrick Mahomes with talent. It used to be around March, and now it is in May. So this will allow you to kind of figure out how the rest of the offseason goes before you could hit those guaranteed mechanisms up to create more cap space if you need to. John, am I missing any explanation?
No, that's an excellent point, Pete. And I think it's one that we didn't really fully appreciate at the time the contract was restructured.
Right.
Because it's one of those things that people really don't pay that much attention to. Most people just focus on the average per year, and because the salary cap is so difficult to understand. But this is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people just didn't get that after mid-March, usually I think it was St. Patrick's Day,
Great
March
holiday.
17th.
Tremendous holiday.
They would pay him his guaranteed money for the season. And at that point, they had the opportunity to create some cap space by turning some of it into signing bonus. And once that was done, they couldn't do it anymore. And now, simply by moving that date until after the draft, that opens up the possibility for them to decide how much money they need when they know how much money they're going to need.
Right.
Because if things had been a little different in this season, it's not hard to imagine they could have come up with a wide receiver during the offseason program that would have made a difference. So on, and you could carry this out on any number of different levels, but they thought they'd get Chris Jones signed to a deal, and they didn't. And now they've put a system in place so that if that happens again, they'll be better able to deal with it. So I think that's a very underrated aspect of what they did with his contract restructure.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that with Mahomes' contract and creating more room when they need it. And it does just offer the personnel staff more clarity on how to approach all of these situations. All right, John, let's go to your first marinated takeaway of the 2023 NFL season.
Well, I think it's mostly just about expectations. I think that it's real easy for us to forget how far we've come in such a short time. I mean, yes, since Patrick Mahomes became the starter, we've become this team that has succeeded beyond anybody's wildest dreams. And yet we forget that once upon a time, making the playoffs was a laudable goal in and of itself. And I'm really surprised that so many fans are so upset by failing to get the top postseason seed and, not beating other teams by huge scores. Look, the Chiefs haven't been beating other teams by huge scores, even with Mahomes, because as you note, Pete, that's the way that the league is built.
Right.
And it's just that this year they've had enough problems that some of those games have gone the other way. How many of these games have been because of turnovers and one play that went the wrong way for the Chiefs? And so I think that that's something we need to remember, not only in the playoffs this season, but in the years to come. Even the Patriots didn't win the Super Bowl every year. They may have won their division every year, and the Chiefs did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
they're approaching that record. They're at 8 now, and they could get to 11. I think Patriots is a good team to bring up because that was very clearly the most impressive run in NFL history.
Sure.
And they won 6 in 20 years. There were 14 seasons where they did not win the title. I also think, and this will build into my first marinated takeaway. I've said this in a number of places, but I just want to reiterate it here. The AFC is going to be sick if the Chiefs advance this year. We mentioned house money. This is one of the more flawed Chiefs teams, probably the most flawed team, especially offensively, of the Patrick Mahomes era. And building a little off Steve's point too, they're going to fix this offense as far as weapons they have in this offseason. This is the window right now. This playoffs is the window for teams like the Buffalo Bills, for teams like the Baltimore Ravens, for a team even like the Miami Dolphins. I mean, they have to win this game on Saturday because it just is the best opportunity with the Chiefs on the ropes, so to speak, to go for the knockout. And if they manage to still win this tournament and get to the Super Bowl, the AFC should be sick. This is their opportunity. I mean, really, they should be physically ill that they were not able to accomplish it, because I think, to a lot of the disappointed fans' point, I'm with you. I think, it is smart to remember 8 or 9 years ago that the playoffs were the goal. But that being said, I think this offense is going to be back, quote unquote, next year. They identified Rashee Rice as a guy. I think, to Steve's point, they now know that Travis Kelce probably more of a high end 2 or low end 1, and may need to bolster the tight end position. I think they've established that Isaiah Pacheco can be that guy. They kind of have really, I think, figured out their identity. They do need to add pieces for 2024, but it's going to be way better. And so here's the opportunity for the rest of the AFC. And if they don't do it, and I think the Chiefs are among those who could make a run here, nauseating. Other teams should throw up if they're not able to win the AFC Championship this year. All right, Steve, let's go back to you for your second and final marinated takeaway of 2023.
this is another one, just, thinking of their needs and the issues that they've had this season. And this is really just me leaning into how I would construct things for the future. And I think the biggest decision that I think starts immediately when the offseason begins is, how do you get L'Jarius Sneed on a long-term deal for the Chiefs? Coming into the season, I think the thought amongst us and a lot of people who cover the Chiefs was like, yeah, Sneed will probably hit free agency like Charvarius Ward did, because all offseason it was Chris Jones. You got to get the Chris Jones deal done. And there was virtually nobody talking about L'Jarius Sneed. Like,
I know
this is a 4th-round pick guy who's headed into a free agency year, and there's been nothing. Like, there's been no conversations about an extension here in Kansas City. And the level that he's played at this season, and it's just something that he's built and built and built every year. He's come back better for the Kansas City Chiefs. And now you have Trent McDuffie, who's got an opportunity to continue to build on what has been a tremendous second season. I just think it's really rare that you have two corners like that are young and talented, who are guys that you drafted and developed, that are legitimate cornerstones of your defense, where we see these secondaries just fall apart really fast in the NFL. And you got two young guys who have a chance to legitimately be the best cornerback tandem in the NFL over the next several years. I think that's something that you spend money on, and that's something that you invest in, because when we saw the Chiefs let Charvarius Ward go, like, I was fine with that. Charvarius Ward was a really underrated corner for the Chiefs for a long time, and he's been tremendous for the San Francisco 49ers. But I don't regret them letting Charvarius Ward go, because the Chiefs had something in place in L'Jarius Sneed already. But right. I just think that they're the guys, those kinds of guys. So L'Jarius Sneed is the kind of guy that you draft and you pay and you keep around, because he has been that good for you and that valuable for your defense.
Yeah, I'm with you, and you start to wonder what that means for the rest of the team build. Like, I know everyone is obsessed with wide receiver in round 1 this year, but what if they were able to get someone like T. Higgins in free agency? Would they make sure to sign L'Jarius Sneed and then have to go defensive tackle in round 1, trade up to get an impact player there? That's where also the development of Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who had an all right game yesterday, and I think his strength program is going to be huge for the Chiefs in their build as you go here. But it does make you think about Chris Jones, and I think there was optimism on the team side that they would get something done, and maybe that would have led to contracts for L'Jarius Sneed, other players that needed to be signed, but it just played out how it played out. Chris Jones yesterday in an interview was just straight up like, I lost money in my holdout. That's why I'm getting my money back. And he was excited about that. But, the situation played out as it did. I don't think anyone's really happy with the result, but it's led to some tough decisions coming up in this next offseason. All right, John, your final marinated takeaway of 2023's regular season.
I kind of touched on this a couple of weeks ago before we went on our holiday break, as it were.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that the wide receiver core in 2023 wasn't that much different than it was in 2022. And even at the end, Rashee Rice ended up being pretty much a 1-for-1 replacement for Juju Smith-Schuster. So why was it different? Why did we have so many of these players suddenly dropping the ball more often, although still a percentage, not all of their throws, or not all the passes that went to them were dropped? Why did that happen? And I mentioned that in a situation like this, maybe we should be thinking about Patrick Mahomes, because he's the common factor in all of those passes. And I looked at some numbers today, and in 2023, he had the lowest QBR of his career at 62.9, the lowest passer rating as a starter at 92.6. That's not a good number for Patrick Mahomes. But what goes into that passer rating, the biggest chunk of it, is the interception percentage and the touchdown percentage. That he had the highest interception percentage of his career as a starter, 2.3%, and the lowest touchdown percentage as a starter, 4.5%, and 2 pick sixes. That's not something the Chiefs have typically done, is have touchdowns scored on interceptions.
Yeah.
I think if you took Patrick Mahomes' mistakes out of the equation this year, that he threw a few fewer interceptions, didn't have a fumble or two that he had this year. I mean, he's going to make some mistakes. That just comes with the territory. But if it just come down a little bit, maybe the Chiefs win 2 more games this year. And 2 more games would have made all the difference in where they are in terms of the playoffs and where people are in terms of their expectations. Nobody'd be talking about these drops.
Right.
And I just think, and I'm not saying this because I think we need to get rid of Patrick Mahomes or that he's going to falling down or anything like that. Don't misunderstand me. I have complete confidence that he and his coaches, that Andy Reid they'll figure this out, and he'll be better next year. He'll come back.
Well,
but we just have to start talking about what's real here. I don't think all the wide receivers got bad all of a sudden. I think that Patrick just is a little bit off this year.
Yeah, there's a couple angles to this. And I think in the dichotomy of the team and the fan base, Mahomes has done so much good and is so beloved that he can't play poorly. He can't. It's got to be other players. And I think to an extent, and what was not talked about this year, it's kind of was like in this big elephant in the room. Not to say he was bad, but by his standards, he underperformed this year.
Yeah.
And I think while you say that, you also have to look at, well, what else was happening? And I think that's part of it too. I think at times the protection was bad, worse than it has been in previous seasons. I think there have been cases where, oddly enough, and this doesn't get a ton of attention either, Creed Humphrey is not snapping the ball completely well. And I think that has affected the time a little bit as far as that quarterback clock. The receivers have not, gotten as much separation as they had in previous years. This is why I don't blame the personnel staff, because I think they were seeing what we all saw last year. And you were like, oh, you know what? Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a veteran. He's going to be maybe looking for another contract or wanting to stay with the Chiefs and make that money in the final year. He won't really fall off. Sky Moore looked pretty good. They had a great Super Bowl. Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, they're certainly going to take a step because they're in their early 20s, and that's what guys in their early 20s do, especially guys with the evaluations that we had coming out before the draft pick and then the trade, and like they just didn't. Kadarius Toney was hurt. He had one injury after another all year, and then Sky Moore just kind of hit this wall that you didn't anticipate based upon everything that led up to it. He looked great in training camp. He went to every day of Camp Pat. Pat liked him. They wanted to feature him. It just never happened for Sky Moore. And so I think there's a lot more to it, but I think you're right. Like Patrick Mahomes maybe having, by his standards, a down year did not help things. And it's okay to say that, but it doesn't necessarily mean you suddenly are trying to get rid of, obviously, what is one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen, if not the best, through 6 or 7 years. And granted, here too, like if they were to go on a run, no one is going to care about how the regular season went or what the wide receiver room looked like.
Right.
It's just going to be
all right. If they figure it out this week, it'll be great.
That's the beauty of American sports. You win, and you advance, and it doesn't really matter. All right, my final marinated takeaway is I just think this is worth remembering as we approach the playoffs, trying to put things in perspective as usual. This could be the last dance for this version of the Chiefs in a lot of ways. I think there is uncertainty about Travis Kelce. We talked about definitely about Chris Jones. I think Chris Jones is wearing another uniform. I'm not sure the means of how that goes. Tag and trade, walks, the Chiefs get a comp pick or whatever. I think he is not getting paid by the Kansas City Chiefs. Willie Gay Jr., I don't think is here. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Maybe some Chiefs fans are happy about this. But he had a nice stretch to the end of his career, but I don't think he's here. So I think especially offensively, definitely some key defensive pieces. This is going to be a different looking team next year, and it's worth remembering that as we go into this final ride. Like it's kind of sad in a way. Like you're not sure if this is going to be Travis Kelce's final games as an NFL player. You're not sure, and this is more probable. But you're going to see Chris Jones in a Carolina Panther uniform next year, or it's just an odd phenomenon just to remember as we go. And I think that can help motivation as well. Just these guys realizing like this could really be it here. Let's try to make the most of this opportunity that we have starting on Saturday afternoon.
I think that's right. But it's not the first time we've been through this. We didn't know it was going to be Tyreek Hill's last season
No,
with the
definitely not.
Chiefs, and
Definitely not.
and there has been change that the Chiefs have gone through, and Tyreek Hill being a great example, and they still won the Super Bowl.
Right.
After going through that change that a lot of people thought would make an enormous impact on the team, and there are some who now believe that we're just now seeing the result. We're finally seeing that impact, although I don't agree with that. I think that I think it's something else. I don't know what it is. It may be a lot of factors, but
Go ahead, John. Say it.
changes.
It's Connor Embry's fault. The whole season is on Connor.
No,
Embry.
don't get me started on this because I think Connor Embry's getting a really bad rap without really anybody having a real understanding of what he does.
I'm just kidding.
I don't get me started on that deal. We'll have a whole rant to deal with. So.
Oh, okay. All right. We're going to back off. Final thing before we let Steve go. Steve, it's Chiefs and Dolphins. We know you're going to shoot us straight. How does this game play out on Saturday?
I actually feel pretty good about the Kansas City Chiefs in this
Look
one.
at that. That's what we want.
Yeah.
I just think because I was kind of listening to some Miami-based stuff this morning to just see what the conversation was after they lose to the Buffalo Bills. And
look at this research by this guy.
And I think a lot of the feeling there is, and I think this is without really being like locked into how the Kansas City Chiefs have been playing and everything that's been playing in their favor is like, oh, we can play the Chiefs and we can beat them because they've been struggling this season. And it's like, totally overlooking the fact that Miami's defense has totally fallen apart. Like their defense midseason was playing like a top 10 unit in the NFL, but that was before they lost both of their star pass rushers. Their secondary's in shambles right now. They lost another pass rusher last night. Their linebackers are really banged up. Like their defense has totally fallen apart due to injury. And I think the Chiefs can exploit that. I think Spags is going to dial things up and give Tua a lot of problems. Their offensive line's banged up. I actually feel really good about this matchup for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm pretty confident in the Chiefs this week.
Tua is not a guy that deals with pressure well, and that should play, as Steve was mentioning, into Kansas City Sands. All right, thank you to Steve for joining us for Marinated Takeaways. When we come back, we will wrap this thing up with some snap count takeaways and one final quick preview of Chiefs Dolphins on Saturday night. Stay with us. Back here on the Arrowhead Pride Editors Show, we now turn to that esteemed executive editor, John Dixon, for some snap count takeaways. John, this game didn't matter at all, but maybe it did a little. What did you find out?
Well, for one thing, the Chiefs ran the ball quite a bit during this game. They passed on just 53% of the plays in this game. That's not the lowest it's been all season, but it's close to 50-50, which is kind of unheard territory for an Andy Reid offense. So that was pretty unusual. There were 8 active players who sat out of this game. Pacheco, Valdez-Scantling, Aladican, Reed, McDuffie, Bolton, Gay, and Karlaftis. Usually that list is 1, sometimes 2 players. But normally the Chiefs get everybody they have active for a game out on the field. Sometimes it's just on special teams. But normally it's Blaine Gabbert all by himself on that did not play list. So that was kind of unusual. Getting to the actual snaps, I have a 2033 trivia question for you.
2033?
Yeah, for 10 years from now. You can use this in a bar and make some money.
Yeah, sure.
Who was, in 2023, the first Kansas City wide receiver to get 100% of a game's snaps?
I guess McCole Hardman?
Yep. That's right. McCole Hardman was on the field for every offensive snap in Sunday's game, and that hasn't happened in any game this season.
Yeah.
I expected Hardman to get some work. Okay. I also thought Valdez-Scantling would get some work. That's what most people thought, that, well, he's going to be gone at the end of the season anyway, so they're going to put him out there. They don't care if he gets hurt because he's not producing anything anyway. And apparently the Chiefs don't feel that way. So he was sitting out. Hardman's in there for every play. I mean, that was kind of amazing to me that we haven't seen that all year. And here it is in this, meaningless game. And a guy who wasn't even here at the beginning of the season is is on the field for
Yeah.
every snap.
I think that was by design based upon what Andy was kind of saying last night. It seems like they wanted to get him involved because he's been banged up, a lot of this year.
Right, right.
With the thumb and early on and
I think
having
we'll
to come back
continue
to the Chiefs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we'll continue to see him because they were using him in a lot of different ways on Sunday. And, and he showed that he could do it, made a contested catch at one point. We don't normally see that from Mecole Hardman.
Mhm.
So that was good. Richie James at 83% was the second highest, then Ross at 66 and Justin Watson at 31%. I'm going to guess that they intended to just play Hardman, James, and Ross in this game. And when Ross was injured,
Yeah.
Watson came in for the rest of his snaps because they only had 4 guys that got
I don't think
snaps.
Watson played in the first half either. So
Right. I think that was
okay.
just about Ross getting hurt. Yeah, I don't
Right.
think he would have been in there. Blake Bell, 71% of the snaps. Noah Gray, 47% of the snaps.
Wow.
So Noah Gray kind of got the semi-starter treatment in this game. He played, but not as much as he might normally.
Man, I was wrong about Noah Gray. I thought he might develop into this next Kelce. I mean, he's a good blocker and can make a few catches here and there, but it's not going to be in the cards for Mr. Gray.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I'm not sure I agree with you with that, but yeah.
No,
I mean,
that's why they play the game.
We'll
find
yeah,
out.
That's right. That's right. If Kelce gets dialed back, if he is with the Chiefs for another season or two and gets fewer snaps, we're gonna find out if he could be that guy. We haven't really had that opportunity yet. On defense, Jack Cochran, 100% of the snaps, and also played 85% of the special teams snaps.
Get him an oxygen.
He had 103 snaps in this game.
Oh
Now, I don't normally look at, guys who played a whole lot of snaps on a couple of phases of the ball, but I thought this would be one where we would see some interesting stuff there, and we did. Cam Jones, 98 snaps, and Joshua Williams, 90 snaps in Sunday's game.
Yeah, Cam Jones and his game kind of made me think Willie Gay is unfortunately someone on the outside looking in of 2024. I think he's a rookie, undrafted rookie. Very nice signing by Beach and company.
And I think they'll bring Tranquil back next year. I think they would rather have Tranquil than Gay.
Well, Drew has kind of said in different words that he is willing to he really likes Kansas City and the surrounding area, and he likes the team, and I think he's gonna be willing to sign one of those 2 to 3 year Beach specials where they do all that complicated stuff you and Jared understand with the cap, and then you guys can explain it to me how they managed to get him for $1 million.
8 defensive linemen played in this game. Felix Anudike Uzama was tops at 73%. Malik Herring right behind him, and he had a great game. Picked up a sack there in the last drive, I think it was, in an important moment. Followed by Tershawn Wharton and then Chris Jones at 55%, which was not exactly expected. I think everybody thought that Chris Jones had played 10 snaps and that would be the end of it, but ended up playing almost all the way through the third quarter before he finally got that sack that put him over the edge there. So, that's what I saw so far.
Yeah, those are your snap counts from the Week 18 game. We got about a minute or two left. Just briefly on this game, we know that Tyreek Hill is heading back to Kansas City. We are going to probably have a few articles about that. And once again, on arrowheadpride.com as we go. We know that Hill is going to really, really want to play well in this game. So I'm excited to see what the Chiefs do as far as a plan. Imagine it's going to be a Snead follow situation with a little extra help. And worth watching here, I think, are the 2 offensive weapons that are injured right now for the Dolphins, and Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert. If you're playing the Chiefs, I understand it's a down year for the offense, but you are going to want to have to be full throttle. So those are the 2 names to watch. As Steve alluded to, plenty of injuries right now for Miami. They lost recently Xavier Howard and Bradley Chubb. Last night, Andrew Van Ginkel was ruled out of their game, and so who knows what happens with him. Plenty of injuries on defense, so it's to an extent playing in the Chiefs' hands when you consider the success the defense was able to have against the Dolphins offense in Frankfurt. So they'll be looking to build upon that. And then, John, the big one to me, So you got a team that plays and practices in Miami, Florida, coming to 1 degree weather. I mean, it's going to be real feel around 0 degrees at kickoff. And to me, I'm not always someone that cares about the weather, but I just think in general, this is a huge disadvantage for Miami coming into Kansas City. That's playing right into the Chiefs' hands.
This is interesting. I've forgotten a couple of things about this game that was in week 9 between the Chiefs and the Dolphins. One of them was that everybody thought the Chiefs had made a mistake by not leaving earlier than they did to go to Germany.
Yeah.
And everybody thought that was going to blow up in their faces. And it turns out that the Chiefs did it exactly right. They came into that game and took a 21-0 lead at halftime. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
After a while, all these games become a blur. So
then the Chiefs didn't score in the second half, and Miami, was firing back. This will be a fun one. I'm going to head out there. I think Ron's sitting out there too. You're going to need face covering. This is a face covering game.
Yeah,
it is. I can't even walk in the parking lot without putting a scarf over my head. So I don't even have to wear contacts. I don't have wipers on these spectacles here, John. But it should be fun. Should be a fun week as we go. It's going to go quick, right? We got the game on Saturday night, so everything's boom, 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 fast this week. Keep locked in at arrowheadpride.com for all your updates on this game as we go. We'll have the newsletter, arrowheadpride.com/subscribe. Steve will have the podcast flowing, the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. If you leave us a rating and a review, as we did earlier today, we will read it right here on the Arrowhead Pride Editor's Show. Thank you to Steve for joining us for our 2023 Marinated Takeaway Roundtable. Thank you to John for joining me as we go. My name is Pete Sweeney, the editor-in-chief of arrowheadpride.com. Have a great day and stay safe in that snow if you live in Kansas City and don't need Peacock.